broadcast television, which has been awful. It must be among the worst in the world. When you look at either the Hindi television sector or the so-called national TV channels, news channels, they've been awful for the most part, almost overwhelmingly.
There is a view that the coverage of the campaign was enthusiastic if one-sided in terms of its reportage, but it lacked purposeful interrogation and it lacked analytical depth. To what extent do you agree? To what extent do you disagree with that view?
I think that's perfectly said. I fully agree with it. I fully agree with what you said. I couldn't say it better.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.
Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. As the final day of voting gets underway in Bihar, we take a look at the way the media has covered this election campaign. Has it been perceptive and insightful, or sycophantic and predictable? Have assertive questions been asked, or have politicians imposed their preference on both television and print? And has the coverage highlighted issues that matter to the people of Bihar, or largely ignored them? Those are the issues I shall raise today with the former editor-in-chief and publisher of The Hindu and one of India's most highly regarded journalists, N. Ram. Mr. Ram, let me start with a general question. As you look back on the way the media has covered the Bihar election campaign, are you impressed, are you disappointed, or even dismayed?
Karan, it's like the curate's egg, good in parts. And that good comes not from all the mainstream, and particularly not from your prime medium where you made a big mark, television, broadcast television, which has been awful. It must be among the worst in the world. When you look at either the Hindi television sector or the so-called national TV channels, news channels, they've been awful for the most part, almost overwhelmingly. But there have been newspapers, I would cite the Hindu or the Indian Express, which have done a decent job in certain respects, both on the ground and particularly on the issues using data journalism. And the other notable feature is the YouTubers, the people like Ravish Kumar and Ajit Anjum. Ravish Kumar has a following of, what is it? More, I was just looking it up. Is it more than 14 million, and Ajit Anjum has about 5 million, and I think on YouTube, and that is making a difference. A Scroll in the digital media space has been doing a very good job on the ground, but perhaps when you talk about overall reach and propaganda, they have been pretty awful. So it is like the curate's egg, which means it gets spoiled.
Let's come to a few specific details. First, whenever the Prime Minister or Home Minister addressed a rally, all the television news channels would cut live to them, regardless of the fact that the channels may have been in the middle of a news bulletin, and regardless of the fact that what was being said by the two had been said many times before. In your eyes, was this sensible news coverage or sycophancy?
Sycophancy, without a shred of a doubt. They do it all the time. There's heavy pressure on these media, but they also do it willingly because they benefit from this. So I think there's a nexus between the present ruling establishment, the BJP government. No, it's not just the BJP, their whole Hindutva apparatus, and the big, owned by the media owned by the big players. That nexus has got stronger than ever, and I think the inevitable result is sycophancy. Yes, it's been awful, and this is a very good example, which you cite here, of cutting, regardless of what is being said, what is happening. You cut to those you want to please. It's happening today also in the United States to an extent, with Trump, who loves to be flattered, sycophancy, not just in the media, but among many political leaders and so on. They know how, in this transactional diplomacy, they know how to please Trump. But that's incidental, but I couldn't resist making the comparison.
Secondly, both the Prime Minister and the Home Minister repeatedly accused the opposition of permitting infiltrators, or ghuspaitiye as they call them, to enter the country and become voters. Even though the Special Intensive Revision in Bihar has revealed no evidence of this, and even though, worst of all, this is a communal dog whistle against Muslims, which is roughly 14-15% of our population, I don't believe the Indian media either commented on this, and it certainly didn't criticize this. Was this a lapse on the media's part or understandable restraint?
This is a grievous loss, because this is an issue that should have been brought to the fore. The communal campaign, here and there, they do it. But the media, this is a grievous loss here in the coverage of this, because this dog whistle, this whole, in fact, no evidence has been produced, virtually no evidence of anyone who's falsely claiming to be an Indian citizen, this infiltration issue. But there have been, this has been a recurrent theme in the BJP's campaign, and right at the top. So the failure to highlight this, to expose it, and to condemn it, to indict it, I think it's a grievous failure on the part of the Indian media. They've not done, speaking overall, although there have been editorials and so on here or there, but the impact of that is not significant. So I fully agree with you on this. Yes.
In contrast to how television channels treated the Prime Minister and the Home Minister, when Rahul Gandhi repeatedly spoke about what he calls vote chori, the media did not hesitate to comment on the subject. Does this contrast in treatment suggest partiality and one-sidedness?
Yes, of course. I think Rahul Gandhi picked a very important issue. Sometimes, when he says the whole thing was stolen, in some cases he may have been exaggerating, or he couldn't prove it conclusively, but he raised a very important issue, and I think it's had an impact. Namely, the fairness of the Election Commission, its integrity, and also its transparency. This Election Commission, and particularly the Chief Election Commissioner, have behaved in an irresponsible manner, on this, and in an arrogant manner, even responding to a major political leader. The kind of language that the CEC uses, I've been repeatedly distressed by it. I don't think previous election commissioners did that, certainly not the Chief Election Commissioner. So they've not answered the basic questions. When, for example, on the Brazil, she was not a Brazilian model. It turned out she's a hairdresser, whose picture turned out, but it's appearing in different places in Haryana. They had to respond to that. But they want him to swear an affidavit, as though it's a court of law and so on. And, and the kind of arrogance that it shows towards the opposition, and particularly leadership, I think is very deplorable and distressing.
Again, forgive me
Rahul
interrupting.
Gandhi has done his job because he has raised this question.
Forgive me interrupting, but the media didn't comment on the behavior of the Election Commission or its failure to respond adequately to Rahul Gandhi. They were very critical at times and they didn't hesitate to comment on what Rahul was saying. But in response to the failure of the Election Commission to respond, the media was silent.
I mean, I read the Hindu editorials and I think they've repeated, of course, in restrained language, but they have really pulled up the Election Commission for lack of transparency, for not answering these questions. And, for example, saying that using this cover of privacy of voters' privacy to just block any question that comes to them. And there have been others. Scroll, I think, has done a very good job, both reporting and commenting as elsewhere. But I agree with you that overall, there's been this bias in not interrogating the role of the Election Commission in an aggressive way or in the way it deserved to be done. Because the performance of the Election Commission of India in this whole chapter has been deplorable. It's unacceptable. Chief Minister Stalin has now raised the pitch. That's been reported here quite widely because it's the ruling party and they have their own reach. The media have been reporting that, but on the whole, where you're sitting in Delhi to observe it, you have an overview of the performance of the media. I agree with you that...
So we're saying three things about television in particular. First, television news channels pandered to the ruling party by cutting live to the Prime Minister and the Home Minister every time they spoke. Secondly, television news channels were not critical of the communal dog whistles that the Prime Minister and the Home Minister were indulging in. But thirdly, in contrast, they certainly didn't hesitate to comment on Rahul Gandhi, but what they didn't do was they didn't comment on the Election Commission's failure to respond to Rahul Gandhi. So this attitude of television was extremely one-sided, extremely non-journalistic in its behavior. Would you agree?
Yes, they are in the government's pocket, most of them. And we are not naming names here, but we know what we are talking, who we are talking about. And I fully agree with you. I think we have among the worst. We thought it's quite a developed news television sector. When you were there, for example, on broadcast television, whoever it was, I'm not saying it because you're talking to each other, but I think this is a good example of, your personal friendships didn't come in the way of asking tough questions. I know that from you. There may be one or two others like that, but they got very rare. And today, they are in the pocket of the ruling party,
Okay.
the ruling establishment, and and people are beginning to comment on it. I don't know how much persuasive impact they carry. It remains to be seen because I think people will get fed up with this sycophancy and this propaganda machine. And you got to go back to Chomsky's manufacturing consent. Chomsky and Herman, they did a fine analysis about the U.S. press in relation to U.S. foreign policy. I think it's coming through here in a big way. It's becoming a propaganda engine.
Okay.
No subtlety of any kind.
Let me raise another aspect of the media's coverage, both television and print, of this Bihar election campaign. One got the impression that both the NDA and the Mahagathbandhan spent a lot of their time criticizing each other, and the media certainly lapped that up. But should the media instead have pointed out that this is really irrelevant to the people of Bihar, whilst issues that matter to them simply didn't get the attention those issues deserve? The media was quite happy to pick up the clashing between the two sides rather than raise issues that matter.
Yes, I think on the whole that's true. I wouldn't know enough about the performance of the local media, the small papers, because from what I read, apparently they picked up issues like quality of education, access to roads, and that sort of thing, compared with the what you say that the big media, the so-called national media, focused on the clashes, the personalities, personality-driven, Modi versus Rahul Gandhi, Tejasvi Yadav versus NDA, and so on. The big ticket issues. They talked about unemployment as an issue, migration, and so on, electoral fraud. And on the other side, you had all kinds of promises made I think big appeals to women voters. Yeah, but the people of Bihar have been largely forgotten in this media coverage, of course. But this is a pattern in India that when there's a highly competitive election where much is at stake, you try to sensationalize coverage, pick up rivalries, pick up big fights, controversies, and so on. And the educational role that the credible information role and the educational role that the news media should play or expected to play or supposed to play, I think gets sidelined.
Let's at this point, Enram, come to things that didn't happen. Abroad in Western democracy, they would have happened, but they didn't happen in India. And I'll first take up interviews. The biggest names on either side, like Nitish Kumar and Narendra Modi on behalf of the NDA, or Rahul Gandhi on behalf of the Mahagathbandhan, did not give a single interview. If that had happened in any major Western democracy, the media would have torn them apart. But in Bihar's case, it was accepted with docile obedience. Isn't this a case of the media simply letting itself down?
Absolutely. I think this, because the Prime Minister he doesn't give interviews, and he speaks like a megaphone to the social media, the country at large. And I'm surprised that Rahul Gandhi, who has much to gain from, if he gets a bit of media support, has more or less done the same thing. They are equally at fault. And I think they must be persuaded, at least some of them, to be more respectful of the media and to take it seriously. It's an attempt to show disrespect to the media, and also the media not pointing this out recurrently, not making it a serious issue. I think is letting itself they're letting themselves down.
Something else that is standard practice in the West, but completely ignored in India, is the need for election debates. That is how, in the West, leading contenders, leading parties are judged. Now, in the case of Bihar, it may have happened with party spokespersons, it may have occasionally happened with junior MLA candidates, but the big names simply avoided it. And once again, the media accepted this without complaint, without demur. How do you view this?
Yes, I think these debates are a valuable platform to make potential voters understand what the issues are, what positions they take, how competent they are. And I think, unfortunately, this convention, which has now come to stay in many Western countries, has not arrived in India, and certainly not the people who should be debating right at the top. I suppose they fear being exposed. In some cases, they can't stand each other, and so on. And they don't see the need to do this because, we're not demanding it. Particularly the media are letting them off lightly on this, because if they're not accessible, and many political leaders in India are not accessible. This is a complaint I hear in many places. Take Mr. Karunanidhi, for example, whether he was chief minister or the opposition, because he was a journalist and writer, he was always accessible in good times as well as bad times, or almost always accessible. And there are other leaders like that. Perhaps Mr. Lalu Prasad, when he was at the height of his political career, and so on, or Jyoti Basu, and so on. They were accessible. I think Rajiv Gandhi himself, I found him quite accessible because he had a certain presence.
But the media did nothing.
But here, that's gone. That's gone now.
And the media did nothing to put pressure on them. The media made no attempt to embarrass them for failing to agree to election debates. And normally in the West, if leaders like Starmer or the leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch, were to refuse to participate in election debates, the media would embarrass them. Here, the media was silent and complicit.
Very often it doesn't even figure in their thinking that there should be a debate. I think that's the level here, that there should be a debate, and these debates are valuable if they're properly structured and conducted with with an impartial or independent, convener or a mediator, or whatever you call it, who conducts it. It's not part of the game here, unfortunately.
Absolutely. What we had, of course, and we had a lot of it, was studio discussions about what I called the tutu meme of the election campaign. How informative and enlightening were those discussions? Or did you find that they were much of a muchness?
Yes, absolutely. And I'm fed up with this. We switch it off and turn to cricket or whatever is going on if those studio debates take place. And, and also the same guys, you know what they're going to say. Some are very unpleasant. They insult each other, or they just repeat. They're stale, their arguments, and they're very predictable. There's no element of surprise in these studio debates. Nothing instructive, no new ideas, no independent criticism. You can largely predict what they're going to say. And that's, I think, almost in all Indian languages. The same thing happens. There may be a few that stand out, but this has to be studied. But I think that's very unfortunate.
Something else that didn't happen was a critical analysis and evaluation of the manifesto promises made by both sides. Now, as you know, both sides made grand promises of payment to women, increasing pensions, offering free electricity, and a lot more. Shouldn't the media have evaluated these promises, attempted to cost them, judge their fiscal feasibility and their overall impact on Bihar's economy and development? And yet, none of that was done.
Yes, that's not been done. These promises needed to be put under a microscope, and we have the ways and means now to give those numbers to show whether it's feasible or not. The promises are easily made. That was a failure. In fact, Karan, what I did before was to ask ChatGPT-5 to do me a comparison of the promises made by the two main camps, the NDA and the Mahagathbandhan. And it gave me quite a neat table, which I have here, what they promised. It's quite fun. It's very easy for news. You didn't have to go to AI to do it. Very easy for them to do the same thing, but they failed. It's very easily done.
So
Here
what you're saying is that if the
manifestos
media had wanted, it could have done it with great ease. All they had to do was to go to ChatGPT.
ChatGPT. Here, for example, jobs and skilling. NDA, 1 crore jobs / opportunities. District level mega skill centers. Global skilling hub. Skill census. Mahagathbandhan, 1 government job per family via law within 20 days. Begin distribution within 20 months. Regularize contractual / outsourced staff. Women and
Quite right. And this could have been done by the media if the media was just willing to do it. But that effort by the media, that commitment that we have a duty to cost and evaluate and analyze what is being offered, that commitment was missing, wasn't it?
Yes, they didn't even think of it. Most of them anyway. It's very easy. I did it. I got it done in 10 minutes.
As we end this interview, let me go back to 2 general issues. There is a view that the coverage of the campaign was enthusiastic, if one-sided, in terms of its reportage, but it lacked purposeful interrogation and it lacked analytical depth. To what extent do you agree? To what extent do you disagree with that view?
I think that's perfectly said. I fully agree with it. I fully agree with what you said. I couldn't say it better.
Finally, drawing upon your years of experience, what would be your advice to the media about how election campaigns should be covered?
Study this as a case study. Bihar, maybe some surprises will emerge. Maybe some creditable coverage here or there may emerge. Maybe we learn a lot more about what is put out on YouTube, which has become a major platform in politics and also for media to expose what's going on, to report and expose what's going on, not just commentary. So I think do a case study and do it honestly and bring it out. And from that, I think you can learn. Provided you want to do serious and honest journalism, you can learn from that. So I think this case study can be done. Maybe a small team can be formed of people who are willing to volunteer their efforts. And, because you have to bring all this information together. It's a very complex landscape out there, media landscape out there. So I think you can use it as a case study in case some good things emerge, that'll be encouraging, but it's likely to turn out to be a major disappointment. I completely agree with you on that. But we maybe get some surprises. So I would like this exercise to be done and then have a discussion on it.
And Ram, thank you very much for the time you've given me. Thank you very much for your analysis of the way the media as a whole, both television and print, have covered the Bihar election campaign. And thank you for pointing out that at the end of the day, the vast majority of what the media did was disappointing, if not dismaying. Take care.
Thank you very much, Karan. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Take care. Stay safe.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch The Interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.